All right, here we go. Okay, so let's get into it. Feeling confident about fitness levels before a big trip. So basically, as I said before, really common situation a lot of people struggle with here. Ultimately, a lot of these big trips that we book on for, particularly if you're going through Camino Women, doing an organised tour, an organised group, typically it's something we may not just do on our everyday weekend. And a lot of the trips we do book on for are a little bit out of our comfort zone one way or another. And in the lead up, this can lead to, a lot of sort of like stress and worry and anxiety if you're going to be ready, because there's obviously so many question marks around these trips. Like sometimes you go to different countries, sometimes you've never done a multi-day thing before, sometimes you've never slept in certain situations or hiked this long or whatever it may be. And there can be quite a few question marks, which can be a little bit worrisome, which is fair enough. Everyone goes through it. When it comes to, the stuff that I always talk about is physical preparation. And, typically in the lead up for a trip like this, one of the things we can control in regards to getting ready for a big trip is our physical preparation and our training. But realistically, for some people, even if they've been training really hard, they've been going out doing lots of hiking, they've been doing strength training, they're doing gym classes or whatever it may be, for a lot of people, there is still the question mark around, am I actually going to be ready? Is all this stuff I'm going to do pay off for me on the trail? Am I actually going to be able to go and do what I need to do for the trip and all of that? It's really common. For others, there may be a situation where, you've got a trip in 12 weeks or 4 months or 6 months or whatever it may be. And all of a sudden you get 4 weeks away and you're like, oh my gosh, my training, I had good intentions originally, but it was super disrupted. Maybe I got sick, maybe I went on holidays, maybe an issue came up. Maybe I just never got around to it, I never got motivated. Now I'm at this time where I'm like, I've got to go. And sometimes it can be even more worrisome. And obviously we don't want this kind of lingering stress and lingering worry kind of taking over things. So we're going to talk through a few ideas around how to at least fight this mental battle and just be aware of where you're at in regards to all of this. So what we're going to be covering is just some simple benchmarks you can aim for to ensure that you're going to feel confident in your body's ability for the trip before you actually go, before you step in a plane or whatever it may be. A few simple, one really simple mental strategy you can use to help overcome doubts and worries and stress before an adventure. And I get a lot of my clients using this. And then also what you can do is if you do get to the last weeks, like, I've got a trip coming up, but I'm just so far behind where I need to be. A few things you can do to squeeze in as much as you can in a safe way before an adventure. So let's talk about benchmarks. So benchmarks is just kind of like, just having something you can aim for and judge yourself against to, know whether you're ready or not. And having some specific fitness benchmarks can be a really good way of settling nerves and getting in the right state of mind before a trip. And you can sort of say, by this amount of time before the trip, if I can do this, I'm going to be all good. Now, a lot of people, you'll see online, like there's a lot of random articles or blog posts and this and that. Or you go on a Facebook group and you'll ask about this stuff. And a lot of people will often suggest these like random, arbitrary, like fitness tests for this type of thing. You might go down a local gym and they'll sort of tell you, hey, we need to do this and assess your fitness. And I've seen in the past where people say, hey, you need a certain VO2 max to go out and do a trip. Like, and a lot of people got like their watch trackers and it tracks your VO2 max. And they say you have to have this. Or people who do specific strength tests, they say you have to be this level of strength to go out and hike, or go out and do the beat test or a running test, or be able to run 5 kilometers, whatever it may be. There's a million and one fitness tests in the world out there, but realistically, hiking, they're not really amazing. They can be good if you're working with a trainer, you just want to generally track your progress over time. But when we're looking at the trip, we want to get a bit more specific. If you have a hike coming up, if you have an adventure coming up, the main benchmark we want to look at is your hiking. Realistically, that is the most specific thing you can do. That's really all you need to worry about. Yes, it is nice to see if our strength is increasing. Yes, it is nice to see if our general fitness is increasing. But to keep things simple, realistically, you just want to be looking at your hiking. Now, when we come back down to this, is setting benchmarks. This is really, if you kind of watch any of my previous webinars where I've talked about planning out a longer term hiking plan. Setting benchmarks is very similar to this. So if you've watched a few of my presentations before, this section may feel familiar. If you haven't, I hope this will be new good information for you. But basically, the benchmarks we want to set in regards to our hiking when we're looking at our trip, there's two things you want to figure out and get top of your mind as soon as possible. Number one, you want to figure out what your longest day of hiking is going to be on the trip. And when I say longest day of hiking, I quite like using hours at a time. You can use kilometers and figure out kilometers, say I have to hike 15 kilometers or 20 kilometers or whatever it may be. But sometimes that doesn't quite line up with like up and down, because a 20-kilometer hike would take you could be completely flat, it could be lots and lots of up and down. So I like to get a rough idea around how many hours your longest day is going to be. Are you expecting 4 hours, or 5 hours, or 6 hours, or 9 hours, whatever it may be? It won't be exact, but getting a rough idea. And if you're not sure, hopefully your trip itinerary will have a rundown, or if not, you can obviously reach out to the Camino Women. On top of that is you want to figure out what your heaviest pack weight is going to be. So even if you're just carrying a day pack, which I'm sure most people through Camino Women are doing that, just be aware of, okay, is my day pack going to be 3 kilos or 4 kilos, or am I going to be a little bit closer to 6 or 7 or 8? What is the kind of rough estimate of my heaviest weight? Those are the two things we really want to be crystal clear on as soon as possible. And essentially what we want to be aiming for in regards to our fitness benchmarks is essentially 2 to 3 weeks before going on a trip, before you actually fly out, before you hit your thing. You should be confident that you can do both of these things at the same time. So if your longest day of the trip is 6 hours, roughly hiking, and your heaviest pack weight is going to be 5 hours, roughly, 2 to 3 weeks before the trip, you want to be able to go out and do a hike, or if you can't hike, at least a long walk, which is the equivalent of the hours spent and the heaviest pack weight. If you can do that, even though it's only one day, that's a pretty good sign you're going to be ready for your trip. Now, realistically, yeah, if you can do it, you're probably ready. Obviously, you may be thinking about this, oh, Rowan, there's so many other factors when it comes down to it. Obviously, only one day hike is that the equivalent of 3 or 4 or 5 days of this. Or, if I'm going to be really, really hot or really, really cold, or have a bit of altitude or something like that. Or they're going to be lots of up and down, and I can't actually do that where I'm training or whatever it may be. Yes, they're all factors and they are legitimate concerns, but realistically, I kind of use this benchmark for my hikers, and I've been doing this specifically with hikers for like 5 or 6 years now, maybe 7 years. This is kind of what I use, and most of the time it's fine. Only in the really extreme environments does it not really work if you're doing like very, very hardcore heavy pack hiking or through hiking where you're hiking multiple months at a time or whatever. But realistically, for the majority of overnighter, multi-day hikes, this works really well. So that's the kind of benchmark we want to be aiming for. So if you are a few weeks out from your trip, simplest thing, go out and do a hike like this, happy days. But obviously, this worry can start a little bit earlier, and sometimes it can start a little bit like, months and months in advance. So in this situation, what do we do? Well, realistically, this is where our hiking plan comes in. As I've talked about in previous presentations, one of the most powerful things any hiker can do leading into their adventures is just coming up with a rough plan for your actual training hikes. Because so many hikers I speak to, they just go out and just do random walks and random hikes. They don't really sit down and figure things out. But I promise you, if you spend 20 minutes sitting down, pen and paper, figuring this out as a really, really rough guide, it could be so valuable. And this is another situation where it can come in when we're trying to figure out, are we on the right track? So what I would recommend here, very, 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 very simple. Basically, coming up with a plan which will help you feel in control of your training. Just know if you're on track. Realistically, very simple to do. Figure out those two metrics that I mentioned before, that pack weight and longest hiking distance. Now, on top of that, you want to figure out how often, realistically, between now and a trip you can hike for. You can hike. Can you hike every single week? Okay, cool. Can you hike once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks, only once a month? Just be realistic, get a rough idea around that. And then essentially what you want to do from there is just get out a calendar and just work backwards and just put it together a really, really rough plan about thinking about how can I build up to this in a way that will kind of get me to where I need to be 2 to 3 weeks before the trip, and it slowly but surely works up. Very, very simple. Now, rules of thumb for this, if you're sitting down and figuring it out, if you're going week by week by week by week by week, ideally we're sort of slowly building up to those maximal benchmarks before you go. When we're building it out, general rule of thumb is ideally we don't want to be increasing both our hiking time or our pack weight in the same week. So what I mean by that is if you did a hike for 2 hours one week with no pack weight, and then you went up the next week and you did a hike for 4 hours with 5 kilos pack weight, that's not ideal. Instead, what I would recommend is if you did 2 hours with no pack weight, you'd either do 2 hours with 3 kilos or you do 3 hours with no pack weight, and basically choose one or the other to increase. And on top of this, when we're doing this type of stuff, ideally we don't want to be pushing ourselves to the limit. Hiking should be fun. Hiking should be enjoyable. Hiking should be moderate difficulty at most. So you never really want to just it's not go hard, go home that a lot of people think. So start easy and slowly but surely build your way up. Now, the way this may sort of look, like just to kind of give you a bit of a visual in regards to how this actually may look over time, this is an example I used in previous presentation talking specifically about Kokoda. And this was an example where I was like, look, I'm 16 weeks out from my big trip when the situation was Kokoda. I'd figured out my metrics, which is 9 hours was going to be the longest day I was going to be doing. And I was going to be carrying about an 8 kilo day pack. So I sort of said 2 weeks before I go, I'm going to schedule in that training line. I'm going to say, look, that's my benchmark. If I can hit that, happy days, away we go. And then I sort of said, look, realistically, I'm pretty busy. I can't hike every single week, but I've got 16 weeks. I've got to build up. And then I could sort of said, look, I'm going to hike every couple of weeks. So sat down and sort of figured out this plan. First week, 2 to 3 hour hike, 4 kilo pack. I was like, look, that's well within my doability right now. It's not going to be outrageously strenuous, but it's going to be doable. Then I'm going to jump up to 3 to 4 hour hike with a 4 kilo pack. Then I'm going to keep the same time and jump up a little bit of pack weight, increase, and then go keep the same pack weight and kind of like jump up and down there. There's a million and one ways to go about this, but this is just a general rule of thumb, is essentially we just want to slowly but surely build out. And then going back to our original question around, okay, I'm a little bit worried about my trip. I'm not sure if I'm going to be ready on time or whatever it may be. If you sat down and figured out this sort of plan, then you can constantly be benchmarking yourself and just knowing where am I? If I sort of sit this down and I'm sort of like at week 6 and I'm like, look, I'm getting really worried. Am I on track? Am I going to get where I need to be? Then as long as I can go out and do this hike here for 3 to 4 hours, which I scheduled for 6 kilos, if that all goes well, I'm on track. I may still have a long way to go to get where I need to be, but I'm still on track with my plan. That's kind of how I would typically recommend this as the main thing. Have that main thing at the end and then slowly build up. And then if you do sort of get to a week and you're like, hey, I did this and this sucked, it was really, really bad and it was way harder than it needed to be, then it's like, okay, I need to go back to baseline. I need to look at my training and see what I can do to squeeze things in and bump things up. So that's the most important thing to do, whether it's just straight before you go or any time away. So hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, pop in a chat. I'll see if I can help out. So that's the main thing. And that would be cover 95% of people's situations realistically. Very, very simple, but goes a long way. The next thing we want to think about is mental preparation. Because beyond the physical, beyond actually getting out on the trail and just doing those hours and carrying that pack weight, there can be a lot of other worries that can contribute to this worry, this stress and anxiety, and just really, really sort of getting away with our confidence. Things like, we might be going to, well, let's take a coda and say, okay, I'm going to do that. But what happens if it rains? Am I going to be okay? Am I going to be slippery? I'm a little bit worried about that. And that can stress us out. What if I get really tired? What if I just wake up and have a bad day where I just go out and just have no energy one day? What do I do? What if I can't sleep or whatever it may be? There's a million and one things that can sometimes rattle around in our head, which can affect our confidence and can stress us out, not just for a couple of weeks, but for months and months and months. A lot of this type of stuff, like you can practice a lot of this stuff. You could sort of say, hey, if it rains, I could go and find like a rainy day and go out and hike and practice this and that and this and that. And a lot of this stuff, if you really, really try, you can practice it. But realistically, a lot of us are busy. A lot of us have full life, full-time jobs, whatever it may be. A lot of this stuff maybe is just not realistic to practice physically. But when you are looking at this stuff, you can prepare mentally. And putting a little bit of time on the mental side of things for these sort of worries, it can just pay incredible dividends for not only your time in your preparation to ease those nerves and worries, but actually help you feel really good on the track. And this is a really, really simple process you can use to help. So step number 1 with all of this. We've done the physical side of things. We've got our hiking plan. That's all sorted. After that, then we want to basically say, okay, what is worrying me about this trip? We want to sit down and really, 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 really think about what is actually worrying me. We want to identify every little thing that bumps into my head that I'm a little bit nervous about. No matter how small, no matter how silly, literally anything I think about. Because all too often with this type of stuff, and I think we all do, is we worry about something. We think, oh, there's not too much I can do about that. Starts stressing us out, and then we're like, oh, I don't want to think about it, so we just ignore it. And then it comes back, and it stresses us out again, and we ignore it. Then it comes back, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just this recurring thing. And we never really properly think about this stuff. We never really properly acknowledge it, but it's just kind of this stuff that's playing around our head. It's not much fun. So essentially what you can do here as this step is purely just number 1, even not doing anything else is going to be super valuable. It's literally just writing everything down and just having a list of stuff that is worrying you out and literally identifying it, highlighting it, shining a spotlight on it, and say, you know what, I'm acknowledging this is a little bit worrisome. That in itself, if you didn't go any further, can go a really long way. So what I recommend is basically anything that worries you, write it in a list and keep a running list over time because other things will pop up. And make this convenient. Maybe do it on your phone if you've always got your phone on you, or have it on your computer or whatever it may be. Just something that will be accessible, and get this list written down. So another few examples is like, what if I slip over? A lot of people worry, I don't have the best balance. What if I actually have a trip and fall on the trail? What then? What if I've got a dodgy knee? What if I twist my knee? I can sometimes worry. What if I get sick? I've had that happen to me before. What do I do? Literally just write it all down. Now, from there, basically what you want to do is you want to take each of these, and you're going to do each of these individually. It does take a little bit of mental thought, but you want to do each individually. And essentially what you want to do is you want to start thinking, not just if this happens, but really, really, really imagine the worst case scenario of everything on your list. And really, really think about, okay, it's not just that, hey, this happens, what it may be, but put yourself in it, try to get as visceral as you can in your mind, imagine you're there, and put yourself in the worst case scenario. So in this situation, like, hey, what if I get sick? So imagine, okay, I woke up in the morning and I've got this awful flu and I've got 6 days ahead of me hiking. Imagine this worst case scenario, like, oh my gosh, I can barely drink anything. I can barely move my legs. Put yourself in that situation and really, really, really just think about it. From there, once you've actually felt that and experienced that, like, oh my gosh, this sucks. I don't want to actually deal with this on the trail. Ask yourself the question, what can you do and what will you do in this scenario if it happens? Come up with some simple steps that you can do for each of these things. And it doesn't have to be complicated, it doesn't have to be anything else, but realistically, really, really simple steps that you can sort of say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. On the example of low energy, maybe I wake up one day and I'm like, I've got nothing in the tank. Maybe the first thing I'm going to do, if I'm on low energy, I'm just going to, you know what, I'm going to have a snack and I'm going to drink some water. That's what's going to happen. First thing I'm going to do. Maybe on top of that, I'm like, you know, I'm struggling today. I can't keep up with people. Maybe I'm going to intentionally reduce my speed and just go steady at the back of the pack. And then maybe I'm going to come up with a positive mantra that, you know, I can just fall back on. It's just a positive statement I say in my head again and again and again and again and again. All of those things, really, really simple. All of those things can be beneficial for energy. But the beauty of this process is, number one, we've identified this thing. And then we've written down a few little bits and pieces that we can lean on the trail. May sound simple, but this takes such a mental load off you of literally just writing this down and having this here. And hopefully you won't have to use it on the trail. But if you do fall into this situation, at least you've thought about this before and like, hey, this is my little action plan or whatever it may be. Other examples here might be like hurt my knee. You know what? What I'm going to do is I've got a dodgy knee. I'm a little bit worried about it. Hasn't really bothered me too much, but I'm worried about it on the trail. Maybe I'm going to pack a knee brace in my pack. And if I do hurt my knee, I'm just going to put that on. Simple. Maybe I'm going to take some anti-inflammatories. Maybe I'm like, I'll keep some in my pack in case I need it. And on top of that, you know, what I'm going to do is the second I start feeling my knee sore, I'm actually going to communicate with my guides. I'm going to not promise myself, I'm not going to keep it to myself and deal with it. I'm actually going to tell the closest guide and say, hey, I've hurt my knee. Can we go a little bit slower or whatever it may be? You know, this could be anything. But again, it's just some simple steps that you can go through. The final thing is like gastro, like, you know, another example, like gastro, like, you know, that sucks. A lot of people are nervous about that. Certain countries, it can happen. So maybe I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to take some, what do you call it, like gastro strop or whatever it is. I'm going to have that. I'm going to communicate with guides again and say, look, I am sick, you know, like, help me. And I'm going to go really slow or whatever it is. That is really, 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 really simple things. But what I typically get my clients to do if they're worrying about this stuff, if they're like, you know, stressing a little bit, I will get them to go and literally come up with 5, 10, even 15 things that are worrying them and just come up with an action plan for every single thing. That process in itself has helped so many people with that levels of confidence, with that sort of stress, has been really useful. And then in the rare occasion when this type of stuff has happened on the trail, you've had reports back where like, you know what, glad I was there, had that action plan, I put it into place, happy days. So it can go a long way. Sounds simple, sounds a bit silly, but I promise you, very, very powerful. And then let me just double check the time, make sure I'm still on track. Yeah, perfect, right on time. Cool. So that's mental preparation. Yeah, as I said, this might sound a little bit basic, but simply identifying these worries and acknowledging them, that in itself, and then putting some simple action plans together can go a really, really long way. So, last little section is what I want to cover before I get to some specific questions. I'm going to few in the chat, which is cool. So, what to do if you're way behind where you need to be. Perfect world, we've taken our training seriously, we've had a nice clean run of training, we've gotten ourselves exactly where we need to be. That hiking plan is all played out. Happy days. Life isn't perfect. Things come up. There's a lot of situations where we might be 6 or 5 or 4 or 3 or 2 weeks out from a trip, and we're like, oh my gosh, I'm nowhere near where I need to be. What can you do in this situation? Well, realistically, if you are feeling completely underprepared, number one, you want to fit in what you can. A lot of people will get to this stage and they'll be like, well, it's too late now. There's nothing I can do. I'm just going to wing it and just see how we go. We don't want that because, even doing small amounts of stuff during this time can go a long way. On the flip side of things, the mistake a lot of see a lot of people is they're 3 or 4 weeks out, they haven't done much. And what they end up doing is they just do way too much in the next 3 to 4 weeks. They just throw themselves in the deep end and they just like hike and hike and hike and hike and do all this training, this and that. And some people get away with it, but a lot of people, if they haven't done much and then they go all this and jump up, they end up overloading the body. They pick up foot pain, ankle pain, knee pain, stuff like that. The amount of conversations I have with hikers who get themselves into this situation, and then they reach out to me like 3 or 4 weeks before the trip, and they're like, "Rowan, I need help." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like we'll do what we can, but yeah, not ideal." It's crazy. Like I would have spoken to hundreds over the years. It's crazy. So we don't want to fall into this situation. Um, Realistically, if you are really, really underprepared, you want to be smart about this. You want to go on a bit of intention. And you can squeeze a lot of work in, but you need to be smart. The main thing we want to avoid during this time is doing too much walking and too much hiking. And that may sound a little bit backwards if you're preparing for a hike, if you haven't done enough hiking, whatever it may be, but you need to manage this because if you're just walking, 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 you're going to get sore feet or whatever it may be. And we don't want to carry that type of stuff into the trail. So my advice here is basically, no matter where you are, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it may be, sit down, just ask yourself, realistically, how much hiking and training will I be able to squeeze in during this time? Can I do an hour a day? Can I only do like every second day? Can I hike every single week till before I go? Whatever it may be. Figure out your schedule, sit down, be serious, figure it out. For some people, I've had like, people leading to like Kilimanjaro. I had someone who was like, look, I'm 6 weeks out from a trip. I work like an 80-hour work week. I've got young kids. I barely had any time at all. Literally all we could do was like 20 minutes a night on the bike at home. And that was all she could do. But that was what she identified and we worked with it. So be serious, really think about what you need to do and what you can squeeze in. On top of that, what we want to figure out from there is we want to identify any what we call off-feet options for cardio you may have access to. So certain cardiovascular activities you can do which don't involve walking, which don't involve running, which aren't putting pressure through your feet. So what I mean by this, it might be like a stationary bike or an elliptical or a pool or something like that. Anything that you can get a cardiovascular response, so meaning like you get your heart rate up, you can sustain for a long period of time, that doesn't put pressure through the feet. A lot of us may be lucky to have like maybe a stationary bike lying around. Or a lot of us may be lucky to have a gym membership or whatever it may be. A lot of us may be lucky to live next to the coast and we may have access to a beach pool or whatever. If you're lucky enough to have access to this, great. If you're not lucky enough, it may be a certain situation where you're like, you know what, how can I get access to something like this? As much as a lot of people hate the gym and a lot of gym environments are not much fun, if you are only 3 weeks out from the trip, it may be worthwhile just seeing if you get like a three week gym pass to get access to something like this because it's going to make your life a lot easier. Or, you probably do have a friend who's using a stationary bike as a coat hanger. Like, there's so many people who have it floating around. So if you know someone that does, maybe say, hey, can I borrow your bike for 3 weeks or something? Get a bit creative, see what you can do. Essentially what we want to do here is we want to be aiming for, if we can, one longer walk or hike per week. Not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven, not long walking every single day, one per week. And this may be 2 hours plus, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, one of them may be. Ideally, we still want to kind of try to hit those key metrics before we go. If you're like, hey, I've got to ready for 5 kilos for 5 hours, ideally you're going to try to still hit that in the time you have available, but you're going to create a little mini plan. And you're going to say, okay, that's what I need to hit before I go. I've got 4 weeks. How can I build up to that week after week after week? Maybe a really quick ramp up, but do what you can. If you are in this situation, you're like, I haven't hiked at all and I need to build up to this and I'm really, really far behind, then you just need to be a bit smart about your hiking. We still want to try to build up to this stuff, but we want to be nice to ourselves. So if you are ramping up pretty quickly with your hiking, number one, choose hikes with early exit points. So don't choose hikes that will just take you in the middle of nowhere. Choose hikes where you can maybe step off halfway through or three-quarters through or whatever it may be, if possible. So worst case scenario, you get halfway through your hike, you're like, oh my gosh, I've bit off way more than I can chew. I'm feeling terrible. Then you can step off, but at least you tried it or whatever it may be. Number two is the water bottle trick. This is something I really, really recommend for any hiker, but this can really work well if you are ramping up quickly, is if you are loading up the pack to 3 kilos, 4 kilos, 5 kilos, anything like that, make sure at least 50% of your pack weight is made up in water bottles. And basically what you can do is if you are ramping up pretty quickly and you hike for an hour with that pack weight, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm knackered, this is getting tough, dump the water out, accept your drinking water, and continue on. This gives you a lot of flexibility because you can still get a bit of a training effect with that full pack weight, even if it's only 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, the rest of the hike is a little bit lighter, but this gives you a lot more flexibility and can be really, really useful. So fitting in that longer walk. If you can't hike every single week, fit in a long walk, a 60-minute walk, a 90-minute walk around the neighborhood, something like that, or whatever it may be. Next up, next priority. So that's priority number one, something long. Priority number two, if you can squeeze it in, is doing some type of stair or hill or step session. This doesn't have to be complicated. Find a hill nearby, find a set of stairs nearby. If you don't have access to either of them, find like a step, like an aerobic step or a bench at a park or something like that. Just do a session on there. Doing maybe 3 minutes climbing, rest, 3 minutes climbing, rest, or go up and down a bunch of times, whatever it may be. That's priority number two. Even if you can only do that 2 or 3 or 4 times before you go, you can get a lot of good benefits out of that type of stuff pretty quickly. And then on top of that, to build around it all, what I typically recommend is on the other days is just lots of short, easy pack walks. So instead of doing super long walks every day, we're doing one long walk. We're doing one that's a little bit higher intensity, like going up and down stairs, and then you're filling it out with lots of short walks with your pack weight to expect on the trip. So maybe 20 minutes to 40 minutes. Typically, I find if we're doing that lots and lots and lots, it can be really good to prepare the body for that pack weight and give us some good levels of fitness, but it tends to be not so much that it's going to overload you. Like obviously everyone's a little bit different and all of that, but the shorter stuff tends to balance out pretty well. I found it. So that works out pretty well. And then once we sort of look at that, then we want to think about, okay, extra time. What else extra time did I have in that initial plan? Can I do an extra half an hour a day? Can I do maybe one more day of long stuff or whatever it may be? Then we want to fill that in with that off-fit condition I was mentioning before. We want to just fit as much of that type of stuff in as we can. And the idea behind this is we can build our aerobic fitness, which is great for hiking, really, really needed, but it's not going to overload our feet. So we can do pretty much as much of this type of stuff as we want on top of all the walking, and it can be great. So you can basically just go to time. If you're cycling, you can just hop on a bike and ride for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, or 60 minutes. If you're on the elliptical or rower, same thing. If you're going down the pool, you can walk up and down a pool, which works really well. You can swim if you're a swimmer, whatever it may be. That works fine. Or you could even do some higher intensity stuff on that. You could go and do some intervals. You might do 2 minutes quick, 1 minute slow, whatever it may be. But this type of stuff, because it's off feet, it's not going to put too much pressure through the joints. You can kind of bump up the intensity if you like and get some good respects. But realistically, priority number one, longer walk. Priority number two, the staring hills. Priority number three, lots of short back walks. And then priority number four is that off-fit conditioning. Now, the idea behind this is just get lots of exposure to cardio, but limit the amount of stress going through the feet. You may be looking at this if you watch some of my older presentations, you're like, okay, Rowan, you always, every single presentation you do here, you talk about strength training, like where is that in all of this? Realistically, if you're just like 3 or 4 weeks out from a trip, probably just focus on the cardio side of things. You can do a bit of strength stuff if you've already been doing a little bit, but cardio is probably the priority. If you go any longer, fitting in your strength training is a good idea because it can go a long way. If you're really short of time and really behind, that's what I typically recommend. So yeah, that is about that on that sort of subject. Hopefully that just does give you a few ideas. Realistically, when it comes down to training, the sooner you can start, the better, and the sooner you can follow a structured plan, the more confident you're going to be. But if you are stressing out about this, get your hiking plan sorted. Make sure you're on track, and if you're not on track, then rethink your training and see how you can get back on track. Number 2, go through that mental process. It may sound simple, it may sound silly, but I promise you it goes a long, long, long way. And if you are really short on time, you're well far behind, then there's some options for you there. last thing I'll sort of say on this is, as we always sort of talk about on these calls, um, hopefully this does give you a little bit of help. Realistically, if you're in a situation where you've got a trip coming up this year, whether you're short term or long term, whatever it may be, and you do need a bit of help with your training, I would love to chat with you. You know, for my side of things, what I do is I offer personalized online personal training for hikers to help them get fit, strong, resilient for their adventures. What our packages are all about, we typically have a combination of a few things. Will create a custom and personalized workout program to get you physically ready for anything an adventure may throw at you. We do put a big emphasis into education as well, talking about peripheral factors which can make or break an adventure, things like nutrition, recovery, self-care, and mental strength, and also give you the coaching, support, and accountability to keep you on track through whatever is going on. Now, if you did want to learn a little bit more about how we go about things and see if it may be right for you, you can go to summitstrength.com.au/online. On that page, you have a video which kind of talks through the program in a bit more detail. And if it did sound like something you want to get explore a little bit more, there's a link on that page where you can book a call with our team. We can sit down, have a good chat, get to know you, learn about what you got going on, what trip you got coming up, what you need help with, and just ultimately just see if and how we may be able to help you out. So if you do want to learn a bit more, summitstrength.com.au/online, and you can check it out from there. So with that being said, let me just pull up chat. And see if there's any questions. So if anyone does have any questions from any of that stuff I covered, feel free to fire off in chat. I've got 10 minutes left, so plenty of time to have a chat through. Alternatively, if you do have any questions which isn't about that, but anything about your training, feel free to fire away too. A few cool trips coming up. We've got Sumatra, got Morocco, got Greece, Komodo, got Baltics, Greece again, Annapurna Base Camp, bit of Inca Trail. Yeah, how good. A few great adventures this year. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Slovenia, how good. Awesome. So yeah, if anyone has any questions or if there's anything specifically that's like worrying you about your trip, or anything you're like, oh, look, got a bit of a question mark about that, feel free to plug it in the chat and we can talk about that specifically if you like.
Hi, Rowan. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey, Marilyn.
Sorry.
Oh yeah, I can't hear you now. Did you have a question or?
Oh, I do. I just wondered what your view is on electrolyte replacement. How much, how often? It's something new to me, and I just want some guidance, I guess, around that.
Yeah. Electrolytes, absolutely 100% worthwhile looking into for your hiking. Basically, when it comes down to any type of like endurance sport or endurance activity, there are just so many benefits to electrolyte replacement. When it comes down to aiding our hydration, slowing down fatigue, and also on top of that, like minimizing the risk of what we call overhydration, which is hyponatremia, which is basically when we just drink too much water and we sweat out a bunch of sweat and electrolytes. We don't replenish our electrolytes, which can be pretty serious. Realistically, there's a million and one brands out there for electrolytes, so it depends what you're looking at. I typically say for any hike that's over 2 hours, probably worthwhile having a serving of electrolytes somewhere through the day. Goes a long way. Any hike which is particularly hot or particularly strenuous, probably worthwhile having 2 servings of electrolytes, whatever it may be. When you're looking at brands, like I personally like getting brands which have some carbohydrates in it. A lot of people will look at the electrolytes and be like, oh, it's got sugar in here, I don't want that. But realistically, when we're on the trail, we do want to be replenishing our carbohydrates as much as we can. And sometimes we just don't, well, most hikers don't eat enough on the trail. So having carbohydrates in your electrolytes is just an easy way of getting a bit extra fuel. That's what they're designed for. So you can go down like Woolies and get like a tub of like Staminade or Powerade, like that stuff's pretty decent. It's fine. If you want to go a little bit more like higher end, you can get some stuff. There's like an Aussie brand called like Trail Brew, which is quite good. They've got loads of carbs. They're very, very high quality one, and they're very like subtle flavor compared to some of the more sweeter ones. But yeah, basically, yes, absolutely recommend them. Go a long, long way. And yeah, definitely worthwhile looking into.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, then, Ellen?
Yeah. It's new to me. I was reading what's in them, and I was a bit concerned about the amount of potassium, but then I was putting it into context, if you're sweating a lot, it's probably a good thing for it to have that
Yeah,
replaced.
that's exactly it. Like, when we're looking at type of things like sports nutrition
Mm,
versus regular nutrition, it's not like,
mm,
usually we would just sip along electrolytes during the day, but when we are exercising, all of that stuff, we sweat out.
correct. Yeah.
So we do kind of want to replenish it. Um, and particularly if you're going on a hot hike. Did we even do a presentation on this? No, we were talking about hot weather hiking, last presentation, and we were talking about like the risk of hyponatremia, which is very serious. So anyone who's going to Greece or Kokoda, or I don't know how hot Morocco would be whenever you're going. But anyway, anytime it's very, very hot, definitely want to take that seriously. Um,
Thank you.
Joanne was asking any specific training for altitude or steep ascents or descents. Yes, absolutely. I have a lot of information on that I'd be here talking all night. So, Joanne, if you want to send me an email, I've got a couple of presentations I can send you which talk about specifically around this. I'll just put my email in the chat. And if you or anyone else wants the webinars on them, just flip me an email. Just let me know what you're interested in. I can send you through the links and you can check them out. On your time. Yeah. And then, Jenny, if biggest day is 10 hours up a mountain Morocco and I'm 3 weeks out, how many more hikes should I do now? Or should I concentrate more on cardio for the next 21 days? Yeah, so realistically, in that situation, I would still just do pretty much what we covered. I would sort of say probably try to fit in 3 longer hikes if you can. You may not, like if you haven't been doing a huge amount of hiking, you may not build up to like a 10-hour training hike. That may be a little bit too much, but just sort of think about, okay, what is realistic for the next 3 weeks? What's the longest I can kind of confidently build up to? And then on top of that, then just fill out the rest of the week, kind of how I sort of said, do the elevation stuff, lots of little pack walks. Those little pack walks could be mini hikes. If you live near a trail, you could do a 30-minute hike or 40-minute hike. That's fine. And then fill out the rest of the time with that off-lead conditioning. I'd typically sort of say still look at that. And then the only other caveat to that is if you're 3 weeks out, just if you are hiking very, very quickly after you fly out and get in, you probably do want a few days tapering off before you fly out. So you may not want to do your massive long hike just right before you fly out, but time it 5 days or 6 days before you go, or something like that. But yeah, I would sort of say just keep on with what we said. Cool. So I've probably got time for one last question. Anything else, guys, you want to fire away? All right, too easy. Well, in that case, then I might wrap things up and go have a little bit of dinner. So, on that case, yeah, if anyone did watching this now or watching this in the future did have any questions of anything we covered today, or just any other topics around it, my email's in chat, so feel free to flip me an email through there. I'm always happy to chat. Got loads of other presentations, loads of other free resources. Always happy to share. Can't remember exactly what we got for the next presentation. It is in the calendar, but I can't remember what we scheduled, but that is all good. But as always, thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate it and hope you got some good info from it.
Thanks, Rowan. That was brilliant as always. I just saw a few people arriving a bit later into the webinar, so just so you know, we will upload this to the website a little bit later in the week. And then the next webinar looks like it's preventing sore calves on multi-day hikes. So stay tuned for that one. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks so much, Rowan. And I'll see you all very soon.